Hello everybody, this is Leo Brady with AMovieGuy.com. I am incredibly excited to be here today with the fantastic writer and director of his just wild and entertaining, fascinating new film, Dream Scenario. This is director Kristoffer Borgli. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
This is great.
Yeah.
So I think my typical opening question is important for you because you have such a unique voice already. Three films that you've made, all of them very different. Can you tell me sort of what movie or movie experience inspired you to become a filmmaker?
Sure. I mean, I worked at a video store since I was 16 years old in a small town in Norway.
Yep.
And I didn't fully understand exactly what a director was, I think. And I remember David Lynch was a person that had such a strong vision and tone.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me understand that you can come back to each of his movies and there's a a unified sort of sense of voice.
Yeah.
And a vision. And then also being from Scandinavia, like Lars von Trier was really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think just sharing some sensibilities in comedy and sort of bleakness, which I think is like almost like a coping mechanism for us, at least in Norway. It's like so cold and dark so much of the year.
Yeah.
That it helps to find like humor in the darkness, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and like all three of your films have sort of made statements in a way about like social norms, the way society is operating in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, is that also sort of something that's on your mind always, and you want to basically just get it off your chest?
Yeah, there is something to it. There's that Carl Jung quote that people don't have ideas, but ideas have people.
Yeah.
It's sort of like something that's just feels like it needs to come out. It's telling me that this should be an idea or this should be talked about.
Yeah.
And I just like it. At a certain point, you like can't stop it anymore. It just has to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, in your first film, Drib, I saw it at South by Southwest when it first premiered there.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I chose it just out of the whim. I was just like, all right, this time slot's open. I'm gonna go see it. I mean, that was a film that, you know, now that I've seen Sick of Myself and Dream Scenario, it starts to click. I mean, do you have a certain viewpoint of your films that you want to sort of like, you want your audiences to understand where you're coming from, or also exactly what you're trying to say about whether it's social norms, whether it's social media, advertising, things of that nature? I mean, you really have hit a bunch of different things. Whether it's with Drib, it's like advertising. With Sick of Myself, it's like attention and social media, and with Dream Scenario, it's very much like popularity, celebrity, right?
Yeah, I think these things, the audience adds almost the critique or the message. They find it in it. Like for instance, with Sick of Myself, you almost don't see a screen in the film.
Right.
And she never talks about social media.
Yeah.
But everyone says it's about social media.
Right.
So I think it's just the audience does that leap or adds that sort of messaging to the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like things that I don't need to hammer in there because it's just so obvious. It's so integrated with our brains, honestly.
Yeah.
That it's like a Rorschach, and everyone sees social media in it.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Well, I wanted to also ask you about the writing process for Dream Scenario. I know initially there was talk of Adam Sandler being in the lead role, and there was, I know Ari Aster had a little bit of help in sort of getting it produced at one point. But you were the one who wanted Nicolas Cage. I mean, once you sort of get okay, you wrote it, we're going to put you in the director's chair as well. Did you have to sort of structure the writing differently for like it? I don't think you finished it thinking Adam Sandler, but it would be a different movie if it's Adam Sandler versus Nick Cage, right? I mean,
right, yeah. I mean, it's just this is my first movie in the US.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of leverage. When I wrote it, I didn't have anyone in mind.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was ever going to get made.
Yeah.
And then Ari Aster, Lars Knudsen, Square Peg, the company, and then A24 got involved, and then we started talking.
Yeah.
Who should be in it, and they had ambitions for this that were like exceeding what I thought was possible.
Yeah.
And it was it just really clicked.
Yeah.
When Nicolas Cage got involved, it had suddenly another layer to the project. I felt like,
right,
because he is someone that I feel is already sort of a myth in the culture.
Yeah.
And also probably someone that people already dream about. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
He's already in people's heads like that.
Yeah.
So it was interesting when he got involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and talk about working with him too. I mean, obviously, his process is pretty legendary. Having this Oscar winner, this guy who is just, honestly, he continues to just amaze me. Me as the viewer. Like, he has never delivered the same performance. So every movie that he comes into, you're getting something differently.
Yeah.
So, talk about the collaborative process. I mean, does he show you how he's going to play the character, or do you just let him develop it and unfold it when you say action?
It felt very just organic. It was, both of us had ideas for how he was going to look, how he's going to present himself in the world.
Yeah.
And he was just the most prepared actor I've worked with, I think. He showed up to our first wardrobe fitting when trying to figure out who the character is going to be. And this is like months before we start shooting. And as soon as we got like his outfit on, and we shaved his head and did that, he started reciting the script in front of the mirror in this like voice that he put on, and I was just amazed. Like, he already has the character like locked in.
Yeah.
And I was just like entertained watching him do the character.
Right.
I think like we spent like a couple of weeks rehearsing in pre-production, and that was a space where we could really discuss just different ideas of what to do. And I think like once we got on set, we were synced up and we knew what the character was.
Yeah.
And Nick brought so many interesting choices to the character. And he's supposed to be a boring character. That's the struggle that this guy has, is
right,
that he is sort of a remarkable nobody, as they say.
Yeah.
And Nick did respect that, and the character stayed true to that, but still he added just enough like little eccentric nuances to even the boring parts of his persona.
Right.
And it just made him so more watchable than I even thought, and made the character watchable and exciting, even though he managed to stay true to the boring aspect of the character.
Well, and it's got to be one thing with him too that's really probably just delightful as the director, knowing that he's a professional, he's going to give you something, and then when he exceeds what you were expecting or what was on the page, right, that makes you sort of feel like, okay, I've made the right decision here. I'm getting another great performance from Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, no, it was an experience where I felt like I was an audience member when I was looking at the monitor, shooting these scenes. I sort of just got swept up in it, and I was watching the movie in a way, and that was really, really interesting.
Yeah. You talked about sort of that Rorschach test of people seeing what they see. There's so many different unique dreams themselves that you've come up with in this film. Where have some of these dreams come from? Are these your own personal dreams that you've had maybe in your past, and you're adding Nicolas Cage to it? You're adding this character into it. Tell me about that. I think like that. I'm guessing that was probably where a lot of like the hard production stuff was going, because it's like you're using special effects and changing, locations and things of that nature.
Yeah, I wanted the dreams to be big and exciting. We were mostly at least the first half of the movie, we're sort of in a anywhere USA type suburb,
right,
in a very like recognizable and normal environment, and then we see these dreams, and it just makes the movie, the contrast between the very normal daily life versus what is going on in everyone's heads
right,
was such an interesting contrast.
Yeah.
And the dreams themselves, like, there's a difference between the dream when you're having it versus when you wake up and think about it, because when you're dreaming it, your skepticism is completely turned off and everything like seems legitimate.
Right.
When you wake up, it's like laughable that you weren't responding to this in the dream.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take the audience into what it feels like when the dream is happening, when you're actually asleep, and it has stakes and gravity to it.
Yeah.
So I try to like stay off of the things that felt like too silly, too ridiculous, and make people feel what the character is feeling inside of that dream.
Right.
And then wanting these dreams to have like a little bit of a nerve to them, so that when Paul Matthews, the character, who pops up as like a background actor,
right,
for no reason,
right,
that just becomes the comedic contrast.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you see it from like one person to the next with like Dylan Galula's character, like how hers does have a more sexual aspect to it, but it's still she almost feels like taboo or something, that she's what's happening to her is wrong, and yet it still feels like his character is, like, as you said, a background character of that. Like you said, the nerve. I like that. The nerve of what her dreams were is much different than from what other characters were experiencing. Yeah.
I mean, at a certain point, he stops being a background character and becomes more of an active main character.
Yeah.
But in, like, not a very pleasant way.
Yeah, well,
for the most part.
Yeah, well, that leads me to my next question. I mean, because the themes that I picked up on is that, Paul Matthews, the character of Paul Matthews, is a character who is longing for attention in a way, longing for sort of, he's already a tenured professor, so he wants acceptance more from his peers and people who he's worked with in the past, and yet he, that credit to him is not coming, and now all of a sudden he has this unwanted celebrity. So, I mean, did you want to sort of hit on themes of wanting attention is great until you've got too much? I mean, is that sort of...
I think it's... I mean, to be honest, when I worked at a video store back when I was a teenager, the world around me in Norway looked so different from the movies that I was loving.
You're right.
And... I was toying with the idea of like wanting to be a filmmaker, and then thinking, how can I make something exciting in my environment that just feels so boring and random. Right. I started thinking about like, well, dreams, like inside of someone's head, that is the most exciting location, and if you can find like access to it in a script, find an excuse to go into people's brains. It doesn't matter if you're in Norway or wherever you are.
Right.
So since I was a teenager, I thought I wanted to make a movie where we go into someone's head
Yeah.
and spend time there. And then here was this idea that made it possible to go into like a bunch of people's heads and dreams.
Yeah.
And that was like my main interest in the beginning.
Right.
And then I started seeing that this is it resonates with how we live today.
Yeah.
With like everyone being connected to each other in this like parasocial way.
Yeah.
Where a version of us, our persona, does exist in many people's heads all the time, and there's a discrepancy there.
Yeah.
I think that's as far as I really tried to push kind of an analogy of sorts. It didn't start as let me think of a way to speak about modern life and the kind of terrible side effects of the modern life. It started as like, I want to do something Jungian, something about dreams.
Right.
And then now I think people are seeing their version of a critique in it, and it's been different, like what people see in it, and